and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us that gets us thinking, gets us talking, gets us wondering, gets us imagining, gets us laughing, gets us all kinds of good things because we're connected. And perhaps inspired or challenged to do just a bit more because we made the connection. So Connections has community partnerships, and we have a wonderful partnership with the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. And today I have as my co-host the Executive Director of Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, who you have heard before on this show and who is absolutely wonderful, Tabitha Montgomery. Welcome,
Lori.
Tabitha. Oh, I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I want to take this first segment to really talk about what's up with Powderhorn Park. And for folks who don't know, Powderhorn Park neighborhood serves, it borders on Lake Street to north, 38th Street to the south, Chicago Avenue to the west, and Cedar Avenue to the east. But it's much bigger than that, isn't it?
I would like to say absolutely. I mean, so we definitely are in the heart of South Minneapolis. And we are fortunate over the years to have cultivated some of our events and our outreach that certainly connects to what we would call the greater Powderhorn community that has over 70,000 residents in South Minneapolis. But it's a beautiful community because in many ways, some of the assets are really centered around artists and art and centered around amazing local businesses that have been in the community for decades, like so many other communities. And so I think it's special because it just has this vibe that says truly before it was cool to say everybody is welcome, that truly everybody is welcome because there's a little bit of everybody right in your backyard.
And everybody's your neighbor.
Exactly.
So how is everybody doing?
You know, Lori, I think that as far as our community goes, from what I can see from all the different communications online and in the emails that we're sending out and in the phone calls that we've gotten, is that, you know, our community is experiencing a range of emotion. You know, there's deep concern about the impacts of the pandemic. There's deep ache from the realities of local and national losses, both people and place. There's the ache from the stress that this moment is fostering, and so many things in between. And yet, I would say that what those emotions are conjuring up is really clear calls of action. I mean, we are seeing clearly that more people are demanding accurate and timely information. So where are the resources that they can tap into? So that can't be fake news oriented, you know, in order to keep people safe. We're definitely seeing a call and a direct action for mutual aid and service related initiatives where residents are taking it upon themselves to figure out cool and creative ways to support vulnerable groups and people hardest hit by the economic implications of this time. And then we're also seeing, like, clearly so many of your listeners, just an amazing amount of online enthusiasm to create an opportunity to engage, whether in a small way with a house concert or with a game night with family that's across the country. And so as much as I think that we are sobered by this moment in terms of emotionally all the things that people are feeling, I'm seeing an equal response and action. I'm seeing an equal call for us to be more mindful about the information that we're taking in and the information that we're sharing.
I had someone once tell me that crisis doesn't necessarily build character, but it does reveal character. And it reveals, I think, also our community priorities. And we've all had a time out and finding new ways to connect. I think you're right when, you know, with the Zoom parties and whatnot, it expands, I think, our idea of relationship and our idea of what it means to take some time out and how we can cut through some of the busyness into what matters.
Well, and I think that it definitely reminds us, I think that in a very clear way, that both are true. Right? Like, in order to have community, both can be true. We are experiencing in no short order and in no amount of words can truly express devastation, right? The loss of life nationally and locally, the impact to businesses that have been with us for decades and now find themselves in an untenable position. That is so true and so salient, and it is not meant to say because we are able to be resilient that has less of a devastating impact. But what it does say is that, to me, that communities have always been called upon to deal with two truths, multiple angles of a situation, which is this is hard, but beyond any stretch of imagination. And yet, I believe, and I am seeing community rise beyond the occasion that we're in, right? And I think that there's certainly elements and calls for things to get back to normal. But some of the things that I'm seeing in community from organizations that are leading efforts to provide direct services, whether it be for food, continuing education, sheltering those who are experiencing homelessness, is that there is a real opportunity for us not to ignore some of the elements of community that were more unhealthy than not, and that we need to come up with better systems and processes and resources so that in the next instance where we find ourselves facing a crisis, that it doesn't continue to rip through and devastate and completely alter vulnerable communities, low wealth communities, communities that were already under their own degrees of stress before the pandemic came about.
We are stretched, but we're also, I'm hoping, recognizing that, as you're saying, new systems can be put in place that make a whole lot more sense. That sometimes I think systems, we got used to doing it a certain way, and we didn't take a deeper look. We've had to take a deeper look, and we see family members, as you say, not only are we connecting with them all over the country, but we're also feeling different ways that the pandemic has hit different regions. I have a brother in Seattle, and he was giving me, these are things to be thinking about.
Exactly.
As it was hitting them. And how does that impact us? But it impacts something for the next 6 to 18 months, which you do a lot of events. So your neighborhood association needs to be looking at how to make those changes, and you're being very creative with that.
Well, I think it's given us, in some ways, it's unlocked an opportunity or that we would not have otherwise aggressively taken to think about a different way to support, highlight businesses and artists in our community in a manner that says it's not about just business as usual, but this is an opportunity for us to say, how can we more deeply support, serve, and walk alongside those that make up community right now and not immediately think it needs to be canceled. So it may look different, it may feel different, but ultimately it's still an opportunity, right, to demonstrate kindness, to demonstrate service, to connect people in a different way. And so that's why I'm super excited to chat with you a little bit more about what we have planned for our annual Powderhorn Shark Tank event, which in the past has been a small business competition. It's definitely still for small businesses, but we are taking the competition component out of it this year. In light of all of the realities and priorities that our small business community has, a competition is certainly not one of them. And then also our plans to still hold, hopefully, what we believe to be a very memorable Powderhorn Art Fair, as the main event, if you will, is really moving to an online experience. But we are confident that what we have planned and how we are going to promote and support artists will likely still resonate and connect with thousands of people across the metro.
And how many states? There, you've got states that get interested.
Oh my gosh!
In that, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So the artists actually, great point, Lori, hail from over 23 different states, right? So we get applicants from across the country, and over 216 cities that they represent. What I can say, and what we love to tout, is that generally we still see about 90% applicants, or we cover about 90% of the different cities and counties in the state of Minnesota. So we get at least one artist applicant from over 90% of the state. And generally about 50% of those that are juried, because it's a juried art fair, so it's a fine art and fine craft art experience. Those are generally about 50% of those that end up being selected and who participate. So we're super excited. We definitely know that we are mindful of some of the challenges that we're going to be up against, but we're going to meet that with creativity and resilience.
And, every time there's a change that gets made because of opportunity or challenge, whatever, it'll be interesting to see how much of that stays with it, that becomes integrated into the process, that maybe in the years to come we can open up again, but how much of this may stay with us in terms of how we're using our technology to connect. And I'm excited for that. I mean, we're almost exploring new ways of just being in events and feeling connected all over.
Well, I definitely think that's not only a super awesome point, but certainly something we're going to be hoping to learn so that maybe there's elements of what we do this year that we can still mimic next year when more of what the traditional format has been is able to come back into the fold, but yet, it creates access in a brand new way.
And how to merge all of that together. That's an exciting opportunity. Well, I'm looking forward to our next segment where we'll talk a little bit more about Shark Tank. And we've got a gentleman that you will be inviting into the call as well.
Absolutely.
And we'll learn more about his background and his story. And stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and this is Connections Radio Show. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and today I have our co-host is the executive director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, Tabitha Montgomery. She's part of our Connections Community Partnerships. How are you, Tabitha?
I am doing awesome and super excited to be on with you today, Lori.
I am super excited having you here, too. And we've been having fun talking about the neighborhood as well as the events coming up. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about Shark Tank. So for the audience members who may not have heard of Shark Tank, and I can't imagine not knowing at least about the idea of Shark Tank on TV and how but you've done some interesting adaptations to Shark Tank, and then you've adapted it for this year under our unique circumstances. So share with the audience about that.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, the association launched its first ever Powderhorn Shark Tank, which is really a small business competition. And the idea was that it was for businesses that weren't just brick and mortar. It was for makers, hustlers, and entrepreneurs is what we would say. And so basically the entrepreneurial spirit in Minneapolis across the city. And so what it allowed people to do was to fill out a very brief application. We would recruit a very distinguished panel of business leaders from the community, and then they would select finalists to be able to come out and pitch, if you will, their ideas. So they would describe how long they were in business, what made their business unique in front of basically a live non-studio audience, but community members and supporters and people who really believe in and look for different ways to support local businesses. And it would end up with varying prize rewards that the winners in each of their categories, like established, so businesses that have been around for a while, or startups, they would receive different types of prizes for competing and being selected by the juror. And we also had a community vote category, which is one of the categories that I'm super excited to say that Eli, our other guest today, Eli Anthony, who is the founder and president of CoFlash, and he'll share a little bit about his business, but that the community voted, and that led to him being able to participate in our art fair as a vendor, talking about his services and connecting with different people in the community. Now, that's how we had did it for the first 2 years. This year, given the change in circumstances, the pandemic, and how it's really rocked the small business community, it's less about a competition this year. We're simply trying to create an opportunity for small businesses to put their name in the hat and basically share some business advice either around adaptation meaning what are they learning and what are they doing to adapt as a small business in this very difficult time. And we're even we're even encouraging businesses owners who've needed to make the difficult decision of sunsetting or closing their business to tell us what that business meant to them, and they potentially could still be elected or selected as an award winner to potentially participate in a future event if they so choose, under potentially a new business. And we're still working very diligently to try to get some fundraise to offer some cash prizes as well. So we're hoping that we'll know if that's possible by tomorrow. But we will open this year's application, if you will, or just the drawing this coming Sunday on May 3rd. So that's kind of the past, and this year is at least the short-term future of what our plans are for Shark Tank. And I'm super excited to introduce to you, Lori, Eli, who's on the phone with us. Hi, Eli.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you for taking the time and joining us. And, and certainly for even that Shark Tank, Powderhorn Shark Tank caught your eye for you to apply. So why don't you tell us a little bit from your perspective what it was like, to talk about your business and to share your story in the live competition last year?
Oh, it's just a really supportive environment. It's a Shark Tank, but it's quite different from the vicious Shark Tank that you see on television. Because all in all, it's like just a lot of great support for your business and good people.
Now, last
doing
year,
their best to help you.
You had some business partners or that helped judge, right, Tabitha? And they gave feedback and helped support with like business ideas and gave feedback on business plans?
Yep. So generally, U.S. Bank, since the event has started, has been our presenting sponsor, and they are this year as well. And they are wonderful at offering up some of their senior leaders to be a part of the jury panel. And they select the finalist. So the association doesn't do any of the selection or the selecting of the award winners. And then they facilitate the day of pitch experience where they're encouraging this business owners to describe their product or service, and then asking questions to get a sense of what that business owner's plans are going forward. And so we've had representatives from United Health Group, from Best Buy participate, from local businesses like Hamburguesas El Gordo have been jurors in the past. It's just been an amazing experience.
And do you remember some of the questions and support that they gave you, Eli?
The questions, I think so there were two questions. One was about, I think, how my business was going to grow in a way that would be beneficial to the community, and especially to communities that are underrepresented in my trade. As well, I think the second follow-up question was more about how I could be sustainable as a business. So whether or not, how my marketing strategy, among other things. So yeah, I think we had, how many minutes do we have, Tabitha? I can't remember, about 5.
About 5 minutes each finalist received. Yep.
Yeah. And it was just, obviously it was a first time for a lot of people to do a Shark Tank situation. And it was just a real good breaking in for that kind of thing for my business. So it was a good stretch for me, and especially good because I was able to participate in the Powderhorn Art Fair.
Well, tell us a little bit about your business, and then tell us about what happened at the art fair.
Okay, my business is a flat roof patio business. So about 6 years ago, I came up with a way to edge the perimeter. So it's an edge flashing that both edges the pavers that you would put on a flat roof, and there's a lot of paver options these days, as well as manage the water so that it was able to get away from the house through a gutter type system. And then since then, I've developed green roof flashings too. I have a patent on one of them, and I have a lot of patents pending. So I've been in the building, construction, home remodeling industry for 20 years now, since I graduated from college. I just kind of took my summer job and made it my full-time job. So now I've been installing flat roof patios pretty much only, and trying to reach out to other architects and builders to have them work my product too. So yeah, the experience there is just a great way. I made a lot of good connections with other people in the trades, as well as homeowners. I'm doing a project for one homeowner there in Powderhorn now from the art fair, and it was more beneficial than I could have imagined, I would say, participating.
We love to hear that, Eli. I mean, truly, it's because of entrepreneurial spirit and vision and drive and commitment like yours that really we know enriches any community, right? Not only ours, but in Minneapolis, but across the state and across the country. We're seeing, quite frankly, Lori, just the importance, again, we're reminded the importance of small businesses in our communities, to not only to the character, right, but what brings so many of us out to be more connected with one another on a day-to-day basis. So we were just super excited and honored that Eli, that the event caught your eye and that you took a few moments to put your name in the hat. And this year, we're encouraging all prior year participants to simply put their name in the hat, because it's not necessarily a competition this year. It's our simple hope that we can reward several businesses with an opportunity like the one that you had last year, Eli, to participate in some of our events like Art Fair or our music festival, Powderhorn Porch Fest. And Lori, I should say that we're going to give those that are chosen the option to either participate this year in somewhat of our reimagined experiences or hold it for next year. And it will be of no cost to them. And we imagine that some of our businesses might find that to be a little bit more attractive, because certainly we believe that we will be able to maybe gather in slightly larger ways than we're going to be able to do this year.
And gearing up, a little bit more time to be thinking through what could that all look like. Well, folks are interested in learning more about it. You can go to ppna.org and you can look up under the events Shark Tank. But Eli, why don't you also give your website out?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's www.coflash.co.
And can you spell that out?
It's CoFlash, so COFLASH.co, not com. I've had a lot of people go to the com, and that's too bad. But it's CO at the end and CO at the beginning. I would also like to say that the other participants, I made a lot of great connections with the other participants, and they were wonderful people all around. So,
well, we love hearing your enthusiasm and your endorsement and your excitement for this year coming up, as well as hearing your success and your continued success. So congratulations.
Yes,
thank you.
Wonderful. All the best to you, Eli.
And we need to go to break, but thank you so much for sharing with us about your journey and your story with your entrepreneurial small business, and we wish you all the very best. You're listening to Connections Radio Show here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Stay with us. We'll be right back just after a few commercials. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. And as part of our Connections Community Partnership with the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, I have a wonderful co-host who has joined me on many shows, and I just adore having her on Connections, and that is Tabitha Montgomery, who is the Executive Director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. Welcome, Tabitha.
Hello, Lori and everyone.
Yes, it's so much fun having you here. We've had a great conversation about the cool things that you're doing with the Shark Tank, and in this segment, I'm looking forward to hearing about how you're going to be doing the art fair a little differently.
Well.
Yeah. The Powderhorn Art and Soul.
This year, it's crazy, Lori. The Powderhorn Art Fair has been going on this will be its 28th 9th year, right? And so we over time have been able to, in partnership with amazing artists, to highlight over 6,900 artists from across the country. And because of everything with the pandemic, we are certainly not able to gather in Powderhorn Park as we have in the past, but we reached out and surveyed many of our artist applicants, asked if they would be willing to entertain and support moving to an online show. And we had an amazing response. I got to tell you, over 65 said yes out of the gate, and 25% were like undecided, but they still, we're seeing, are accepting and confirming their participation. And so we're super excited. And so what that means is that we're going to use the powderhornartfair.org website to create an online experience where people can buy art, fine arts and fine crafts from over 200 artists that have been juried into this year's show. And they're going to be able to, in some instances, chat live with some of our artists. We're also planning, if social distancing guidelines permit, but we're having what we're calling a Powderhorn Art Fair splash event, where we will be in the parking lots of Pillsbury House and Theater and Frostbeard Candle Studio, which is right there in the heart of Powderhorn and the central neighborhoods in South Minneapolis. And we will be able to feature our youth artists, our community artists, our group exhibitors who have in the years past have come from amazing organizations in Minneapolis. And we're still going to be able to create what we call an art fair market experience. But the majority of artists will be featured this year through an online e-commerce fully capable website.
On your website right now, which I know that there's the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association that has the Art and Soul event, but you have another website that when it goes live will be the one that you want to have folks be directed to. But if you go to the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association one now, and that's ppna.org, I'm on the Art and Soul page, and I'm looking at some of the cool art from last year. And it just kind of gives you a nice taste of all the different types of art. There's jewelry, there's pottery, there's painting, there's wearable art. It's just and such a variety and such a cool. It's just fun to go through and go, oh, I could see getting some of these. I could see when it kind of wets your whistle for it.
I tell you, we've been so fortunate that every year we've been able to attract and present several hundred artists, generally from over 23 states, 216 cities in the country. And this year will be no different. We're excited. The Powderhorn Art Fair has a rich history. It started by community members right there in Powderhorn Park. And we are just so fortunate to have an opportunity as an organization to continue to support and walk alongside artists in this way. I mean, the other cool thing I got to tell you, Lori, is that we're hoping to be able to pull off is to basically kind of create an arts and action initiative around encouraging people to purchase a piece of art for an essential service worker. And so that piece of art would go into a pool that essential service workers could simply, with no fuss, put their name into a drawing, and we're going to randomly select an essential service worker to receive a beautiful piece of unique, original, fine art or a fine craft from this year's art fair. And if we are able to get everyone to purchase a piece of art from all of the presenting artists, we would be able to give away a piece of art to an essential service worker every day through the end of the year, which is also exciting.
What a wonderful way to honor. And there's wonderful ways that people are giving food and supporting, but there is a power to giving art,
Absolutely.
Healing.
Exactly. I mean, we know it brings joy. We've seen art heal communities as we are even introducing what we're calling an artivist category. So artists who use activism to really express and to talk about challenging issues in our community, to foster change, to foster different ways of thinking about solutions in our community. And this is akin to that. You know, art and being able to give the gift of art often unlocks different perspective. It unlocks an appreciation, I think, for the talent of others. in just a very personal way. And so, again, like we said, we're super excited to be able to hopefully to include that in this year's event. Certainly something, Lori, I don't think that we would have thought to do outside of this moment. And so, like, again, it's not even a bittersweet moment. It's just a devastating moment for so many and for so many reasons. And in the midst of that devastation, we are finding ways to have hope, to think resiliently about what we can do in service of others. And we certainly see avenues to be able to do that through this year's Powderhorn Art Fair.
And when is the date?
So it will be like every year, the first weekend in August, which this year will be August 1st and 2nd. And the online experience will open at 8 a.m. and it won't close until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday night of the 2nd.
And will that be the same time that you'll have the limited in the parking lot cool Minnesota celebration?
Great. Yeah. Yep, great question. That's going to be limited hours. So that's going to be both days. That'll take place on Saturday and Sunday as well, August 1st and 2nd. But both days, that event will be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And you said earlier how artists are really excited about it. But artists are also taking a hit right now. So if there are ways that we can encourage the audience to be thinking about how to join with the online, you're helping not only support, the community, you're helping specific artists. And
that's right.
They're going through tough times. The COVID-19 has hit the small business, it's hit retail, it's hit restaurants, it's hit the artist. Yeah. And if there are ways that our AM 950 audience can think about having a piece of art that can make a difference in someone's life, especially now, not only adds to the beauty of your home and a piece that you can cherish and perhaps even turn into an heirloom that you can give to your family, it's also at a very particular time that you can look back and went, I invested in this art during COVID-19 because this was my way of giving back to the community. This was my way of making a difference. And every little thing that we can do to create that community. In our first segment, we were talking about really Powderhorn Park. If you come to the events, you become part of the neighborhood. They adopt you.
Absolutely.
I
Whether
feel like
you want to or not.
I love it. I feel like I'm part of the neighborhood. So
absolutely
support the neighborhood. Support the people that you care about. And we'll be publicizing it on our AM 950 as well as on Connections radio show, as well as on Connections website and Facebook and all that good stuff. But you can also go to the ppne.org, and then if you want to give the specific art fair website.
Yes, it's powderhornartfair.org. So all together, no space, no dashes, Powderhorn, POWDER HORN, Art Fair, ARTFAIR.org. That site will be live the first week of July. So we're still working fast and furious to build it. But Lori, thank you so much for every point you made about why purchasing a piece of art during that time and supporting local and regional artists will make all the difference in the lives of so many artists, and certainly in the legacy of this particular event that this community has come to treasure and to support.
Well, we're appreciative of all the work that you do with the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association as well, and all the events that you support and all your creativity that you're bringing, Tabitha. You're making a difference, and we're glad that you're part of Connections to share that story and to bring the Powderhorn Park into everyone's home right now. The ambassador of Powderhorn Park. And in our next segment, we'll talk about what's happening now, but also what's happening in the future, things to be thinking about, things to create that sense of neighborhood, and what it means for us to be here at COVID-19 together and opening the door for what the future may look like. So stay with us here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, on Connections Radio Show. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. And as part of our Connections community partnership, we have the honor to be partnered with the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. And we're their neighbors. We're neighbors. And I have my co-host, Executive Director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, Tabitha Montgomery.
Hello, Lori.
Hello, welcome back. And thank you for all your sharing and all your creativity that you're bringing to having these events stay alive and take on new dimensions and create that sense of unity and community. I love unity being part of community.
Yeah.
And,
well, we tell people all the time that we think that we exist to connect, inform, and inspire, and we certainly know we can do that within Powderhorn specifically, and certainly outside of the neighborhood itself. And so we are certainly encouraged, right, like I said before, by all of the reasons that I think people are seeing to serve others and to come up with ways to support those who have been hardest hit in this season.
Tell us ways that we can think about serving. What are good specifics that I can encourage my audience here on AM 950 Connections to be thinking about?
Lori, I think like right now, some of the big things that I think from a local and national perspective that will continue to resonate is housing justice and pay equity, and living wages, and looking at every policy through the lens of, does it reflect health and does it reflect kindness? I think we're in this moment right now as a country because oftentimes too many of our policies have not been healthy enough. Too many of our budgets have not been healthy enough. This is an opportunity as we get beyond the blast zone, if you will, of the pandemic, to not to just run back to what we had before in many instances, because it didn't necessarily create all of the infrastructural needs in our communities to thrive and for most people to be healthy, but to simply ask the question, do I believe that this policy will produce health for most? And I think that that's what's essential, because I don't think that most of us in the country, I should say, probably were overly surprised, right, of the data that says many Americans don't have $500 in the checking of their savings, right, or many of the other challenges that small businesses face, which often leads to over 50% not being able to survive beyond the fifth year. We should be asking, well, what would it take for 75% of small businesses to make it past the fifth year?
Right.
What will it take in order for people to be able to remain in their housing if they've not been able to stay on top of their rent or their mortgage payment during this season, right? So even if we've suspended evictions, those costs are still accruing. So there's different campaigns that are saying cancel the rent, cancel the mortgage. And we know that there's a variety of implications to statements like that. But I think the underlying point that different groups are making is that if we don't think more holistically, right, if we don't challenge ourselves to really quantify the true need beyond this moment, right, not just the stimulus checks, not just PPP, not just the programs that are in place now, how are we going to heal and support the different PTSD that's kind of formulating with our frontline workers? How are we going to support the community of business owners and entrepreneurs that might forever be gun shy, right, about starting a business, but we need that ingenuity and their creativity in order to infuse and invigorate our communities as they have so richly for so many years? There's a lot more deeper questions that I think that we need to ask, but being mindful about whether or not for ourselves, I'm not trying to give anybody a cookie cutter approach to determining what's healthy or what's kind, but truly ask yourselves those questions. Is the policy going to support a healthier community? And is that policy operating from a place of kindness? Because that's the muscle that I think that you see most of us actually leaning on most in a crisis. Who can I serve? Who can I encourage? What can I say to thank a person who's still bagging my groceries? What can I say for the nurses, practitioners, and the doctors who are putting their lives at risk on the front line every day, the occupational therapist, the physical therapist, the pharmacist, everyone who has still needed to go into work? And so the gas station attendants, everyone who dons the label essential. What are we willing to say? What are we willing to do in order to enrich their lives after what they've given and what most, and especially government leaders, have considered to be, we are at war? And so what are we willing to do and to give for those who have gone to and are continuing to go to war on our behalf?
And it's also a time to take a pause and consider what health is. And I think sometimes we look at health as sort of the absence of illness, and it becomes, very vital as we're looking at COVID-19. But health is richer. It is absence of fear. It is something that allows us to feel confidence and opportunity and security. That's a different kind of health. That's not just check off the box. You don't have a temperature. It's a deeper understanding that I love how you put kindness wrapped in that, because how do we all ultimately want to live in a kinder world that allows that kind of growth and allows that kind of security? It can be done.
Absolutely. But it starts with each of us, right? It's not necessarily a mandate, and it's certainly not something that each of us cannot easily reflect and plug into. You can be kind in your homes, but this moment is demanding that we consider how we can be kind to those that we don't know, and how can we continually ask the question, how can we become healthier so that we are better prepared in the next storm, in the next crisis that might reach our borders?
And then we look at both fear and kindness as sort of, the choices that we can make. We can act out of fear, which I think creates that scarcity mentality that creates the us and them. Or we can take, I think, the extra step, which is work, that says it's not an us and them, it's a we. And how are we going to come together? How are we going to create something better for us all?
Exactly.
It is always a deep pleasure to have a conversation with you, Tabitha. And I encourage our AM 950 listeners to check out their ppna.org website. Support both the wonderful Shark Tank as well as the art fair, and be creative with them. Support all the good things they're doing, because they're making a difference. Tabitha?
Thank you, Lori.
Appreciate all that you do. And stay with us for next week, too. We're going to have a very creative production company that's going to be joining us that do really interesting work. So I'm just going to tease you with that. So take care. Have a great week.